Before a man can detach, he must first see the invisible chains that bind him. Emotional enmeshment with a narcissistic woman does not begin with love in its mature sense. It begins with stimulation of the nervous system. What feels like chemistry is often anxiety. What feels like depth is often unpredictability. The alternating pattern of warmth and withdrawal creates a psychological loop that keeps you alert, scanning, hoping, and waiting. Over time, your emotional center becomes externally regulated by her moods, her approval, her presence. This is not intimacy. It is conditioning. Carl Jung understood that when something in the unconscious is activated, it does not announce itself as danger. It disguises itself as meaning. A narcissistic woman unconsciously senses unresolved emotional material within you, the need to be chosen, to be validated, to finally be enough. She mirrors these unmet needs back to you, not out of cruelty alone, but because she herself is empty of stable selfhood. Your attention becomes her anchor. Her reactions become your compass. Slowly, without realizing it, you stop asking what you feel and start asking how she feels. This is where enmeshment becomes enslavement. Your nervous system is no longer responding to reality. It is responding to emotional cues she controls. Silence becomes punishment. Affection becomes reward. You begin to perform rather than exist. And because the bond is emotional rather than rational, logic cannot break it. You can know she is manipulating you and still feel unable to pull away. That is the mark of a trauma bond, when the body clings even as the mind protests. Jung would say that what binds you here is projection. You are not attached to who she is, but to who you believe she allows you to become. The danger is not losing her. The danger is losing yourself in the image you built around her approval. Until you reclaim the authority to regulate your own inner state, detachment will feel like death, because the psyche confuses separation with annihilation. But once you see the mechanism, it loses its mystique. Awareness interrupts conditioning. The moment you stop outsourcing your emotional regulation, the spell begins to weaken. And here is the truth worth carrying forward. Anything that requires you to abandon your center to feel alive is not love. It is a psychological trap. To detach emotionally, you must understand what you actually represent in the narcissistic dynamic. You are not a partner in the psychological sense. You are a source. A narcissistic woman does not seek connection to share inner life. She seeks emotional fuel to stabilize a fragile self. Attention, admiration, emotional reactions, even conflict, all of it functions as supply. When you grasp this, her greatest fear becomes clear, not abandonment, but irrelevance. From a Jungian perspective, the narcissistic personality is structured around an undeveloped inner core. Because there is no stable center, the psyche must constantly borrow energy from the outside. She regulates her sense of existence through your emotional responses. When you are upset, trying, explaining, defending, or rescuing, she feels real. Your reactions confirm her power. This is why emotional detachment unsettles her more than anger ever could. Anger still feeds the system. Silence and neutrality starve it. Detachment, then, is not cruelty. It is a withdrawal of misplaced energy. And this is why it triggers panic, provocation, or sudden affection. When you pull your emotional investment back, you are no longer participating in her self-regulation. The control matrix begins to collapse. She may accuse you of being cold, selfish, or changed. In truth, you have simply stopped supplying what was never yours to give. Jung spoke of the shadow as the part of the psyche we refuse to confront within ourselves, and instead project outward. The narcissistic woman projects her emptiness, shame, and dependency onto others, then unconsciously resents them for carrying it. When you detach, you force her to face what she has been avoiding. That confrontation is intolerable, so she attempts to re-engage you through guilt, charm, victimhood, or chaos. The goal is always the same, to pull you back into reaction. This is where many men falter. They mistake her distress for proof that they matter. In reality, it is proof that the system depended on them. Power does not lie in being needed, it lies in being self-contained. When you stop reacting, you stop orbiting. When you stop orbiting, her gravity weakens. Here is the insight that changes everything. Emotional detachment is not something you do to her. It is something you reclaim for yourself. And the moment your inner world no longer moves at the rhythm of her emotions, you step out of the role of supply and back into the role of self. At this stage, the work shifts away from her entirely and back toward you. Emotional detachment is not achieved by distance alone. It is achieved by relocating authority. As long as your emotional state is shaped by someone else's reactions, moods, or approval, you are not in control. You are in response. And response, when habitual, becomes captivity. Jung believed that maturity of the psyche begins when a person develops an inner center strong enough to withstand external influence. This is what it means to reclaim the inner locus of control. Instead of asking, what does she want? Or how will she react? The question becomes, what is happening within me right now? This subtle shift is revolutionary. You move from emotional reflex to conscious observation. You stop being pulled and start standing. In the narcissistic dynamic, your attention has been trained outward. You monitor tone changes, emotional shifts, moments of approval or withdrawal. Over time, this vigilance replaces self-awareness. You abandon your own internal signals to track hers. Reclaiming power means reversing this process, slowly, deliberately, without drama. You begin to pause before reacting. You notice the impulse to explain, to fix, to defend, and instead of acting on it, you witness it. That pause is sovereignty. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional authorship. You are not denying what you feel. You are refusing to let it be hijacked. Jung would say that consciousness expands when instinct is brought into awareness. Each time you choose observation over reaction, you integrate a piece of yourself that was previously unconscious. You stop leaking energy through compulsion and begin consolidating it through presence. What unsettles a narcissistic woman is not your confidence, your success, or your words. It is your non-reactivity. When your sense of self no longer rises or falls with her emotional weather, manipulation loses traction. There is nothing to push against, no hooks to pull, no buttons to press. This is where real power emerges, not as dominance over another, but as alignment within yourself. You no longer need to win, convince, or be understood. You are grounded, internally referenced, emotionally anchored. And when a man governs his inner world, the outer world loses its ability to govern him. Many men believe that once they understand narcissism, they should be free. They read, they analyze, they recognize the patterns, yet the emotional pull remains. This is where frustration sets in and self-blame follows. But the truth is simple and uncomfortable. The bond you are trying to break is not logical. It is physiological, and you cannot reason your way out of a nervous system attachment. Jung understood that the psyche is not ruled by intellect alone. Beneath thought lies the body, and beneath the body lie old emotional imprints. Trauma bonds form when intense emotional experiences, especially those involving fear, longing, and intermittent reward, become paired with attachment. The nervous system learns to associate emotional volatility with connection. Begins to feel empty. Stability feels unfamiliar. So even when the mind sees danger, the body reaches for what it knows. This is why detachment often feels like withdrawal. You are not missing her. You are missing the chemical and emotional stimulation your system adapted to. The anxiety, the anticipation, the relief when she re-engages, these cycles condition the body much like an addiction. And like any addiction, Insight alone does not dissolve it. T. He body must be retrained to tolerate stillness without panic. From a Jungian lens, this bond is reinforced by unresolved childhood material. The narcissistic woman becomes a symbolic figure, carrying projections tied to early experiences of inconsistency, emotional unavailability, or conditional love. You are not trying to fix her. You are unconsciously trying to resolve the past. And that is why leaving feels unfinished. The psyche believes there is something still to complete. Breaking this bond requires more than distance. It requires regulation. You must reintroduce safety into your nervous system without external validation. This happens through consistency, boundaries, solitude, physical grounding, and time. The emotional storms lose intensity not because you suppress them, but because you stop feeding them with meaning. Here is the crucial shift. The pain is not a sign you are failing. It is a sign the bond is dissolving. Discomfort is not danger. And the moment you stop interpreting emotional pain as a message to return, you reclaim the freedom that logic alone could never give you. When a man begins to detach, he often believes he must become cold, distant, or emotionally closed. This misunderstanding keeps many trapped. Emotional neutrality is not the absence of feeling, it is the absence of reactivity. It is the state in which emotions arise, are acknowledged, and are allowed to pass without dictating behavior. And this state is precisely what a narcissistic woman cannot tolerate or manipulate. In the narcissistic dynamic, emotion is a tool. Provocation is used to extract reactions because reactions create leverage. Whether it is anger, guilt, defensiveness, or even excessive empathy, the goal is the same: to pull you back into engagement. Emotional neutrality removes that leverage. There is no escalation, no collapse, no emotional spectacle to feed on. The interaction becomes flat, not hostile, not warm, just real. And reality is deeply uncomfortable for someone who survives through illusion. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming psychologically whole. Emotional neutrality emerges when a man is no longer split against himself, when he no longer needs approval to feel secure or conflict to feel alive. At this stage, manipulation attempts land nowhere because there is no unresolved inattention to exploit. Guilt fails because responsibility is clear. Charm fails because self-worth is internal. Chaos fails because calm is embodied. This is why neutrality is often misinterpreted as cruelty. The narcissistic woman may accuse you of being heartless, detached, or changed. What she is really sensing is the loss of access. You are no longer emotionally porous. You respond when necessary, not compulsively. You speak when there is something true to say, not when there is something to defend. Neutrality also protects you from the illusion of closure. Narcissistic dynamics rarely end with understanding or apology. Emotional neutrality allows you to disengage without needing resolution from someone incapable of offering it. You no longer wait for validation of your experience. You validate it yourself by choosing peace over performance. This is the quiet victory. No confrontation, no explanation, just the steady refusal to be pulled out of yourself. And when a man learns to remain emotionally still in the presence of manipulation, he becomes unreachable, not because he is distant, but because he is finally whole. At the end of this process, something unexpected happens. What once felt like loss begins to reveal itself as initiation. The pain that kept you bound now becomes the pressure that reshapes you. From a Jungian perspective, this is not accidental. The psyche uses suffering to force growth when comfort would have kept you asleep. You were not broken by the experience. You were refined by it. A narcissistic relationship collapses your illusions. It strips away fantasies about being chosen, saving someone, or proving your worth through endurance. When those illusions fall, you are left with a question Jung considered central to individuation. Who am I when no one is mirroring me? This is where purpose is born, not as ambition, but as alignment. You stop orienting your life around reaction and begin orienting it around meaning. Transmutation is the act of converting pain into direction. Instead of asking why this happened to you, you ask what it revealed within you. Where did you abandon yourself? Where did you confuse intensity with intimacy? Where did you outsource your value? These questions do not weaken you. They restore you. They return your energy from fantasy back into form. This is also where the narcissistic narrative loses its power. You are no longer the man who was discarded, misunderstood, or used. You become the man who outgrew the frame entirely. The story stops being about her behavior and starts being about your evolution. And evolution requires solitude, discipline, and patience, qualities narcissistic dynamics actively erode. Jung believed that individuation demands separation from collective illusions and unconscious attachments. Walking away is not the final act. Integration is. You integrate the lesson, the wound, and the strength into a more grounded self. You do not carry resentment forward, because resentment keeps the bond alive. You carry clarity. And here is the final truth to stand on. The moment your pain becomes purpose, the past loses its authority. You do not reclaim power by defeating the narcissist. You reclaim it by becoming someone they can no longer reach.